Good evening, calling to order the January 13, 2026 meeting of the Southborough Select Board. Before I get to our scheduled joint meeting with the CIPC and the Advisory Committee, and I know that both of those committees will need to call those meetings to order. The first item on the agenda is public comment, and is there anyone here that wishes to make a public comment? All right, seeing none. Marcy and Jason, would you like to call your meetings to order?
I call the Advisory Committee meeting to order with 2 members present in person and 3 online with a 4th expected.
Okay, and Jason, are you there?
I am. I just need some help. Is there anyone in the room?
Yes, Mike and Mike are in the room, Jason.
Okay, so I'll call the CIPC meeting to order at 6:35 p.m. 4 out of 5 are members present.
Okay, so the subject matter of this is the recommended capital plan for fiscal year 2027, and your slides were circulated earlier this afternoon. A chance to look at them. I guess it makes sense to just turn it over to you, Jason, to make do you have a presentation to make on behalf of the CIPC?
Yeah, if Vanessa is in a spot to pull up the slides, that would be helpful. What I'll do is provide a quick primer of where we've been and where I think we need some direction from an overall budget perspective from both the select board and advisory, and kind of where the key decision points are that we think are ripe for the start of a dialogue tonight, and most likely a dialogue that will continue beyond tonight as you all continue your work around the budget for next year. I don't see the slides yet, Vanessa.
Yeah, they're coming.
Here we go. So just some quick introductions for you. We've been very fortunate, as you know, through your appointments this year, to have welcomed 2 new members, Mike and Mike. They have jumped right in and been immensely helpful in supporting the efforts that Steve and Tony have been part of for a few years now. And it's exactly the energy we were looking for, and fresh thought and new questions, which has been immensely helpful throughout this process. This slide will look very familiar to you. We think it's important to kind of show, and I think as you went through some of the DOR reviews over policies and continue to think about what policies you can implement, how the town's capital spending has ebbed and flowed over the years. The top really focuses on the general fund, but I know there's been increased focus on the water fund down below. You can see that over time, our capital spending as an overall percentage of the operating budget did dip for a few years. That's due to the ARPA funds in those particular years being expended. So in general, the town has spent roughly the same on capital in a lot of these years. It's just a matter of how it's been appropriated, whether it's been appropriated through debt service, whether it's been through just the general fund appropriation, or whether it's been through the use of these one-time funds. Keep going to the next slide. We have followed a very similar process in getting here tonight. To be clear, we have not made any tough decisions yet. We need to hear some feedback from all of you, and then are certainly happy to collaborate on some of the next steps that we think will be important depending upon the budget parameters that you may or may not have. The important thing is we gave every department head an ample opportunity over the summer to submit all of their capital requests over a 10-year time period. And then we invited them in to the extent that they submitted something, not all departments have capital, to make a presentation to us on their different needs. I'll be honest, we got the presentations at a variety of different stages. Some department heads were right on time, some were very delayed. The more capital intensive a department is, the harder it is for them to submit a complete package all at once, and even as it ebbs and flows, we do get, supplemental requests after even the initial discussions have been had. In prior years, we had some department heads pull back on more at this point than they have, but I think a lot are, kind of waiting for some of the discussion that we're going to have here tonight. I think the other thing to note as part of our process is some departments that have had large capital requests in the past don't have them this year. Fire would be the example. Not to say they don't have any, but their overall capital spending is down, which you would expect based on the fact that we have appropriated a lot over the last couple of years to support some of their vehicle acquisitions. And then you have other departments like schools that we haven't really heard or seen any material items from for over a 5-year time frame, have significant needs this year. So we'll keep going to the next slide. In general, where we're at tonight is from a general fund impact. If all of you support bringing forward all of the items that are on the list from the department heads, and town meeting ultimately funds all of them, we're at roughly 2.1 million of impact to the FY27 budget as it currently stands from a general fund perspective. As a reminder, capital looks at all capital items regardless of funding source, but I know there is a keen look right now in terms of how you're thinking about the rev cap. I know there were numbers floating out there well north of 3 at certain points. That has never been where we were at, and I just want to make sure that that is abundantly clear. We follow a process of ingesting all in isolation before we roll it up, and then in particular, certain decisions have been recommended in terms of how to collapse items for efficiencies, how to get the most bang for our buck, and think about this more holistically, which led to some items being proposed as debt funded as opposed to chunking it over a few different years. So you'll hear a little bit more about some of that as we go forward. Next slide. Now what I'm going to do is just briefly discuss each of the items that have been brought forward by the departments and any discussion that we did have as a committee around them. The first are non-DPW appropriations, which adds up to just shy of $1 million. Facilities has DPW garage doors, so while it certainly will benefit the DPW, it falls under the jurisdiction of the facilities in terms of capital budgeting and planning. This is an item that has been on the capital plan for 5 years and every year has been pushed down. We think now is the right time. If anyone were to do an audit of prior capital plans, this number has also gone up significantly over the past few years just due to what it would take to implement the actual project. The capital maintenance fund, which we've historically budgeted $100,000, is recommended to go to $125,000 this year. I think there's been a lot of discussion in recent years of why it didn't go higher sooner, but we continue to believe that this account is serving its purpose, but due to the cost of doing anything, whether it be labor or materials, justifies the increase. The MIS department is recommending phone system replacement for $25,000. The rec capital fund that was implemented a few years ago is recommending a replenishment of $25,000. The backstop net at 9/11 Field is needed for a variety of reasons. This will be a joint splitting between 9/11 funds and general funds. There's not enough from a 9/11 fund perspective, given other commitments they've made to fully fund this particular project. From a police department perspective, there are 2 frontline cruisers, which are the traditional marked cruisers being presented. This is consistent with prior years, albeit that the cost to actually purchase the cruisers and outfit them continue to increase. What is new this year is there are 2 incremental cruisers being recommended. These are light duty, so more administrative in nature, for a total of $80K, so it's $40K per item. Those are different types of cruisers and more administrative, like I mentioned. The key item here is right now, this would be a net addition of 1 to the fleet. So the chief is planning to trade in 3 and acquire 4 if this were to move forward as presented. I'll come back to the cruisers in a little bit. The department is also recommending a drone. While it would sit under police department jurisdiction. There's certainly public safety benefits well beyond the police department. Firefighting, we're recommending replenishment of the PPE, so the gear allowance of 40K, which is consistent with prior years. And then there are two vehicles on here. One, the replacement of the fire prevention car, and two is the refurbishment of the brush truck. It is important with the brush truck to acknowledge that this is not a new vehicle, and it is to prevent a potential purchase of up to 600,000 in what I'll call the out years of our capital plan, so the next few years. So these two in particular were flagged by the chief. The chief has prioritized the prevention car over the brush truck if we had to make calls, but we thought it was important to bring both forward to you at this point, much like we're bringing the incremental cruiser forward to you, just so you understand the landscape of what we are looking at. There are also a few other smaller police items that are not currently listed here that are in the capital plan that, depending upon how this discussion goes tonight, we would recommend potentially adding into here for consideration. There's just a different phasing of how we received the request this year. I think it's important to note in this, we commented on this when the chief was with us as well. A lot of what we're doing on the police side this year is due to the staffing items that you all and then town meeting ultimately decided on last year in terms of needing extra cruisers, extra firearms, and extra other equipment to properly outfit the personnel that we've now hired. Just a general sentiment from capital that going forward, and I realize this is probably not a year where you're adding personnel based on some of the guidance that we've seen, that the capital expenditures need to be budgeted for as part of the overall pitch that goes to town meeting to properly outfit and equip them, especially on the public safety side, if that does come forward in the future. I'll go to the next slide. Here is a listing of DPW capital requests that are in for appropriation. Note the numbers on the two trucks in particular. I think you all decided to bond or lease those type of amounts last year. We've recommended it as an appropriation for now. Certainly it's a discussion that you can all continue to have. And then there are a bunch of other items here that are listed under DPW, but in some instances benefit other departments more, particularly the last two items in terms of what the department mechanic may be able to do, in particular for police and highway vehicles that currently they're not able to do in terms of some of the equipment they have there. We have asked Bill as well to prioritize each of these if there are cuts that do need to be made when you start to roll this up and consider it against the overall operating budget. We've also presented items that would not necessarily be appropriated through the general fund, but are certainly capital items that town meeting would need to authorize, both in terms of the cemetery and the water fund. The important caveat that we have on our slide that we also had last year is capital can't, well, on the surface, all of these projects make a ton of sense based on the details that Bill has provided to us. Capital can't validate the reasonableness of the overall total spend without kind of seeing the potential impact to water rates, which I know you all have a consultant in weigh that in as well. So we would recommend that you have an idea of what this will do to water rates before making a formal recommendation to town meeting. Now, for the much bigger numbers, there is a significant amount of items that are up for consideration this year that would likely require bonding, particularly on the school side. First and foremost is two projects on the school side, one related to security upgrades. And unfortunately, the slide looks like it got flipped when it was ultimately presented here. The security upgrades are the 1.4, the technology of the 365. But these are programs that would impact all four schools, so the three current elementary schools plus Trotter. The security upgrades would be to bring the school up to a level of safety and security that would meet the current standards. And the technology updates were items that were started as part of a phase plan last year by the school department, including some money that was authorized at town meeting, but would bring every classroom to the same standard. It is really important to note the following. The technology upgrades include funding at NERI. We obviously don't know where that project will or will not go for purposes of the March special town meeting. Anything that is done in terms of technology upgrades will be portable in nature, such that if that building is not necessarily used in the same way that it's currently used, that there will be no lost, what I'll call, funding opportunity there. On the security side, if some sort of plan or warrant article is approved in March related to a more holistic project at NERI beyond just a roof, the security number will go down because that any sort of security needs would be dealt with as part of that package as opposed to this separate town meeting article. This is a change that Capital made as part of our discussion with schools. Schools was phasing this program over a multi-year time period, which was going to be appropriation in nature. We thought there was tremendous benefit to bringing all of our infrastructure to the same standard on both fronts, and therefore recommending this as a one-time upfront cost that is bonded as opposed to piecemealing this over many years. On the school side, continuing down the list, the Finn classroom floor replacement has been an item that they have been phasing over a few years due to the mold mitigation that they've been trying to work through. Again, this is bringing this forward to just take care of the entire building and get the program fully remediated at this point. The Trotter roof is an MSBA approved project as part of the accelerated repair program. That is now ready for full authorization by town meeting if town meeting so sees fit. This is the portion that the town would be on the hook for. The amount that we will authorize at town meeting, very similar to prior items, will be the full gross amount, but this is the amount that has been kind of factored in from Brian's bonding projections. On the recreation side, we're presenting it here just for optics, but it is not a general fund item. There is a program for Fayetteville Park that is in front of CPC right now. My understanding is no formal approvals up or down have been given at that point, but it is sitting on the capital plan. It's important to note that if CPC does not bring that forward for any sort of consideration, our understanding is it would not then be brought forward as a general fund item. It would either be grant funding or pushed down the road. And then some item that's probably going to get significant discussion here tonight is both road maintenance and sidewalk construction. This would be the first of a many-year journey to start to make headway on the beta report on the road side in terms of bringing our roads up to the standards that I think many are looking for. And also on the sidewalk side, starting to execute on the feasibility work that has been done in the past in terms of getting some projects ready. In both instances, this is the start of a very long journey, but not the end. But it is a different approach than I think what anyone has seen before in terms of bringing forward a larger bondable project. I think one of the items that Capital would certainly like feedback from the broader group is whether these amounts should be authorized for potentially even larger sums to give the DPW superintendent greater ability to kind of move forward with projects without an annual approach, but realize that there are boundaries that obviously are prudent in that sense as well without authorizing too much upfront. The final item, which would come out of the water fund, is a water loop at Fisher and Presidential. This has been discussed for many years, both with and without kind of the consideration of the potential Hopkinton project that has been discussed for quite a while here. The next slide is really just kind of showing where we're at in terms of what has already been authorized and what that will look like from a bonding perspective. That's the top part of this chart. The bottom part of this chart is purely illustrative. If we approve everything that's sitting in the capital plan, what our debt could start to look at, it certainly does include a larger school project, whatever that may be, in some of the out years. If you were to go back and look at our presentation from last year, we had these numbers starting obviously a lot sooner, had that project been approved. And the next slide will really illustrate some of the assumptions that Brian used in terms of what's in the capital plan. I think it's really important, Vanessa, I'll have you keep going one more slide. It's really important for anyone that's kind of watching this after the fact. This is, again, what's sitting in the department's capital plans. It does not mean that capital has approved it. It does not mean that all these things will move forward. If you kind of just even look back at last year, we were carrying a library and a new school. Obviously, a lot has changed in a year due to many different factors. But I just think it's important to kind of be able to see ahead before making decisions based on what fits kind of into this year's sort of dynamic. So I already touched on the first point. The second point really, and I think this is where we'd like most of the discussion to pivot, absent any questions any of you have on the specific items, is that the outcome of the March special town meeting and how that carries forward into the annual certainly impacts the plan, both short-term and long-term from a school perspective. I'm sure a lot of you were surprised to see the number of school items, but we've been sitting here for 5 years and haven't done really anything from a capital perspective on the schools, absent I think the Finn boiler that was approved about 5 years ago at this point. So I think knowing that some of these numbers may change as a result of whatever the town's temperature in terms of what they want to study, not study, what sites, et cetera, I think will be critical. But I also think the more direction that town meeting can give us in terms of an ultimate direction of where we may be headed as a town in terms of what construction project folks may be able to get behind, whether it be roof only at the Neary site, not at the Neary site, I think will be important for capital to then regroup after that to kind of rehash kind of where that leaves us from a broader capital planning perspective. And you heard a little bit of my intro on the roads and the sidewalks. I think we, as a capital committee, especially those of us that have been around for a few years now, have heard many pleas for this to be greater and a larger impact on the town. We think that the DPW superintendent has done a great job in moving that pendulum forward here, but I think it's a question of how much, given that both items would be bonded. What is the temperature on how much we want to move forward on? Obviously, he's made a recommendation, but I think an important part of how we move this forward is understanding what else would have to be done on the back end of a lot of this, if those are just the two numbers that we approved this year. So with that, happy to take questions or other commentary, and obviously other members of Capital can certainly weigh in as we go through any of that. You can probably take the slides down, Vanessa, unless someone wants them back up.
All right, so for the select board, Al, you want to?
Oh, boy, it's a big list. I have a lot of sort of little specific questions which maybe would be better off answered in the Saturday session.
Mm-hmm.
I've got two specific questions. Could you talk a bit more about the technology upgrades for the schools? And by my simple calculation, that's over $1,000 a student, and I'm just sort of trying to understand what is in that package.
I think the easiest thing to do would be to probably send you the documentation that the schools gave us, would probably be the follow-up that I would take on that. But it's really to advance a lot of the classrooms to the next standard. I'm not following your math, so if you could help me with that, I'd be happy to also relay it, because I also think
1,000 kids times $1,000.
Thank you.
yeah, but remember what I said. The numbers were flipped by accident on the
Oh,
slide.
I beg your pardon, all right.
Yeah, so it was the $300,000 number is the technology. The 1.3 is the security.
You're gonna fix that, right? So
Yes.
we don't forget
Yes.
that.
I'm
Yeah.
easily confused. So the second item has to do with the roads. And I think we ought to think seriously about treating this as though it's the full program, rather than, trying to bite it off in pea-sized chunks. I'm gonna get hoisted on my own petard as the town cheapskate, because I've been saying that we've been underinvesting in roads for 15 years. And if we were to bond $20 million for 25 years, which is kind of the life of a road, and I'll let Brian throw a brick at me if he thinks that's too long. He's a little nervous. And we were to use all of the funds that we currently use, that the town currently contributes to our road maintenance budget. We would have to triple that amount. By my math, that would be an increase of about $200 on a $900,000 home, the taxes on a $900,000 home. Given the state of the roads, I don't think that's crazy. Right? I know several people are getting ready to fall off their chairs now. I think there are a couple of big issues that need to be resolved. One is, given the roughly $400,000 and change that we get from the state for the Chapter 90 money, can we actually maintain our roads for that amount? And once we perform the upgrade, I'm a little concerned about that. Bill had sent me a giant packet of information, which I've been through. It turns out that Bedford, Concord, and Lexington are trying to do a similar program, and I think it would be highly instructive to communicate with them and find out what their actual experience is in this more aggressive maintenance program. In the last couple of days, I've learned more about roads than I wanted to. But I think that's important, because that's a key underlying assumption to the financial viability of the program, is, whether we can really do that. The second one is, what portion of our roads can we actually address, roads and sidewalk needs, can we actually address with a number like 20 million? My own suspicion is that we will be back for another bite at the apple in 10 years. It's sneaking up on beyond my planning horizon, but I don't necessarily buy green bananas anymore. But I think that's the second thing. And the third thing is, I've now talked to a couple of people about this idea, and they said, well, we'd sure like to see a list of what's actually going to get fixed. I drove over to my daughter's house down Northborough Road, the section with the once failed culvert, and it's pretty bad. And my road just got partially fixed, and it was pretty bad. And I'd like to see this program go forward. I think we ought to be thinking about this. I think we ought to be upfront with the town and say, we want to borrow a large sum of money rather than doing this in piece by piece by piece. I think that number is on the order of 20 million. I think we got an education program to do and some more homework, but I think this is something I think we need to do. Roads are one of the most ancient functions of government, and we haven't done necessarily a good job over the last 30 years. So I've got lots of little questions about things like the DPW door, but I'll hold those for
Let's
later.
stick on roads for a moment, because I think that's the most important thing we can talk about tonight. So can I piggyback
Sure,
what Al
sure.
says? I actually agree with most of it. So remember the last meeting I said, can I take charge of this? So I've been working with Bill. I do think $20 million is the right number. I don't necessarily think you would bond the whole thing up front because he can't get that much work done up front. So you may bond a third.
Yeah.
You got to bond, you should bond it no sooner than when you really need it, right?
Yeah.
Unless Brian's got if we can predict interest rates, we know what to do, right? But we can't. So I do think we should propose a sweeping program that is going to fix these roads once and for all. So I've got the list of roads. I mean, he's got them staged as far as what he wants to do. I mean, remember the 4 categories: horrible, pretty bad, then not so bad, and pretty good, right? That's the 4 he showed us when we looked at this last time. So he's got the first 2 categories set. So Jason, I'm sorry that we didn't get together. We're both pretty busy right now. So I'm hoping I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but he's got this all staged. I do believe that it's possible. He's doing his Chapter 90 spreadsheet too to show that. I do believe it's possible Chapter 90 could do the annual work from that point on. We wouldn't do the warrant article anymore. The bond debt service would replace that. But I do believe we would be, or he does believe that he could possibly do all the miscellaneous stuff year by year using Chapter 90, especially if the fair share continues to come through. Now, to get creative here, and this is your fearless member's idea. Andrew Pfaff is one of the most creative people I've ever met, but he's talking to Bill about doing this internally, literally hiring the people to do it. So we're not paying the 15% on top of the cost. I think I'm not saying yes or no, but it's probably worth looking at that way too. If we really can save a lot of money and it really makes sense, that's where I'd ask another town, have you ever done anything like that? But so I'm agreeing with you. I think we really should bring it forth and just say this piecemeal approach that we had. Remember, we got behind because of the Main Street project. I think we all love the Main Street project. It was the right thing to do, but it cannibalized the road money for a few years, so we're way behind as far as trying to keep up, and there is probably no bigger complaint in this town than potholes, et cetera. So I think we really should start doing exactly what Al said, looking at how to do this thing and not just piecemeal it and piecemeal it and piecemeal it. I think Bill agrees. Is he in the audience?
No.
Okay. He is? Okay.
Oh.
So he can chime in here, but I'm pretty much agreeing with what Al said as far as, at least for now, how to approach this and see if we can get town meeting to agree with us.
Tim?
Jason, can you kind of go back to the Trotter roof? You mentioned MSBA covering part of that, and then you kind of lost me as you.
Neary roof?
No, Trotter. This is
Trotter
Trotter.
roof.
It's a
You mentioned like
$9 million roof.
MSBA, but then I thought you said that the number we see is the, what would be the post reimbursement rate. So I just want to make sure I understand correctly what the full number is and what the post reimbursement rate is.
Yeah, it's north of 8. I can get the exact number if you want it, that gross number. Let me just pull it up here from
So
Keith.
they're paying something like 35 to 40-ish% through that program?
Our favorite number, yes.
Okay.
But yes, it's a number north of 8 for the gross cost, and the number you see is what we expect to have to bond.
Okay, so would we still have to do the full number as part of that approval, or is this different than what the school was before?
No, we would do the drafting of the warrant article would be for the full amount.
Okay.
But from a budgeting perspective, you would only do the amount that we're showing.
Okay, is that with the solar system on it too? There was gonna be solar on that roof at one point, right?
I don't think this has anything to do with solar, because I think that's a separate program. Like that, I think it's solar ready. I do not believe that there's any cost to the taxpayers to install solar, and if they chose to do it down the road, it's more the payback. I don't think it's necessarily a cost to implement.
I remember something about a lease before on that system.
I think we have if someone can correct me, I believe town meeting gave the superintendent in the Southborough Public Schools the ability to enter into a lease, but I'm not sure that there's actually a lease on the table at this point. Happy to confirm that, though.
Okay. A lot of the rest of this would be more Saturday appropriate, but that was the big one that I had.
So when you say Saturday appropriate, Capital's not coming to that meeting, correct?
No, but I looked, and of all the capital items in there, all of the departments that are associated with those capital items
coming.
are there except facilities, which has a little over 400,000 for 2 items. And recreation, but I think at least, and yeah, not recreation, so.
So the departments are going to be ready to discuss their capital requests too, besides our operating budgets, I assume, right? Okay.
I mean, my suggestion, just so that capital does not fall out of the loop, like if there's a series of questions that we can get written responses for so that everyone has them, and also so that said department heads come prepared, and or you can capture the ones that aren't necessarily involved with your Saturday meeting, I think that would just be helpful, because perhaps based on a question that one of you asked, it may change how a capital member votes up or down on kind of the ultimate slate that you all agree on.
Yeah, I mean, if we go a little deeper right now, I mean, the ones that I'm looking at is like the 35,000 GVW cab and chassis, 262,000 times 2, or slightly different, I guess. But, you know, kind of more about what those details are. What would be the replacement if we didn't do it this year? When would it have to be done? You know, what year are we at on the service life of those vehicles? What do they go up to? Some of those questions I'm wondering.
Yeah, I you know, well, capital would be happy to provide you the details we have. I think the department head that is
Yeah.
using the asset on a day-to-day basis is best
That's what I was
positioned to
thinking.
answer those. So appreciate that color, though.
I'm good.
All right, Marguerite?
I have nothing to say at this point.
All right, Jason, I have some really basic questions. So on the slide, towards the end, FY '26 capital request requiring bonding,
Mm-hmm.
and this is including the Trotter roof, et cetera. So the requests that are reflected there, are those included in the 2.133 impact on the general fund or not?
They are, but it's the first year cost, right? So it'll escalate over the next couple of years because you end up with mostly interest. Brian can walk you through any assumptions he's made on the bonding, but there is a small cost in the 2.1 for those to be implemented year one, but it's, to be clear, it's the smaller road program, not what has been proposed here.
All right. And for the DPW Water Fund Water Loop at Fisher Presidential, is that part of the long, tentative Hopkinton IMA?
Yes.
Okay. So there, I know that, in other words, the town of Hopkinton has agreed to pay for that, but under this tentative intermunicipal agreement of if they go forward in hooking into MWRA in Southborough.
They didn't sign it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, is it there because of the feeling is like we just can't wait on this anymore, or, because there could be a way that could be paid for from another source? You gotta come to a microphone just so, okay. So Jason, I don't think you can see, or maybe you can see, but.
I can see, yeah.
Okay.
Mike can answer, yeah.
Yeah, so we
Go
didn't
ahead.
get, I haven't gotten quantitative, numbers from Bill, but the point that he made about that was that the way that it affects the pumping, that there's some cost savings involved in that as well. And, I don't know if it's gonna be easy to get some kind of understanding of whether that cost savings are gonna pay for themselves right away or not. But because of that, it made sense to keep it on the plan, at least,
May I jump in,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely. I was just thinking about calling on you.
Bill Cundiff, DPW Superintendent. With regard to the Fisher Presidential Loop, that's primarily to improve water quality through the presidential estates and the Fisher Road area. Currently, we have 2 dead-end pipes that aren't terribly far from one another. We always want to try to loop water line systems to get that network and get the flow moving through the pipe. That's what this would accomplish. It's not so much about a cost savings issue. It's been part of our capital plan for at least 10 years. And taking advantage, we're planning on taking advantage of that MWRA loan again, which is a zero interest loan that gets dispersed over a 10-year period. So this, like the Lynbrook, the prior Lynbrook from last year, will be constructed and implemented over a 10-year period. Well, the construction will be a year, but
Marguerite, let me add something about the Hopkinton, and Bill's been at all these meetings, so he knows how skeptical we are as far as what they're going to do. So there's just no assurance that they're going to, they're spending money. They keep designing away with no contract. But the agreement that was on the table and's been there for 3 years now, did give us, in addition to doing all the improvements that they agreed to do to our system, to allow their system to work through ours, they were going to give us an extra $1 million. And the only stipulation was we just had to use it on water projects. We didn't have to say Fisher Road or anything. We did. We gave them examples of things, but it doesn't have to be that. So if this needs to be done, don't wait for Hopkinton. I'm sure there's other projects that we can allocate that money to down the road, and there's certainly no assurance that it's ever going to happen. Right, Bill?
May I?
that's correct.
All right, Marguerite, you have a question?
Bill, what is, apropos of the discussion of how to fund road projects, what are your thoughts on that? All at once, a big borrow, or to stage it?
The financing of it, I would defer to Brian. I'm hesitant to lay out a plan of which roads get done at what point, because I want to take a close look at each road individually, annually, and whichever ones make sense to fit in the year's program for that year is where what would rise to the surface for the coming year. We have a plan laid out for this coming year, and the engineering and design and permitting would all have to get done for the subsequent years. So it's a process, and that's why I approached it on an annual basis. In my mind, I think we're hitting the range between 15 and 25 million. So 20 million, as Al indicated earlier. I think we're in that ballpark. The other thing that I want to caution everyone about is when we budget and plan today for a project that's 5 years out, we may not get to that road that's listed on year 5, and that becomes problematic, particularly for those residents that live on that particular road.
So that's why doing, the bond, Al, year by year probably makes more sense, because of, he's got year one, he knows what he wants to do year one, he's got the cost of those, I think, pretty well in hand. But year 2 and year 3, he doesn't know yet, and he doesn't know about the drainage for the road, so it would make no sense to me to borrow $20 million if we're not going to spend but $6 million in the first year anyway. Why do that, right?
Well, we aren't borrowing the money. What we're doing is authorizing the borrowing so that.
Well, okay, so that's different. So if we want to do it that way, so that we're done, right? And then we just go and do the borrowing 1, 2, and 3. That's fine, too.
Yeah, I'm not
I thought you
suggesting
meant borrow the whole 20 up front and
Oh,
leave
good
it sitting
heavens,
there
no.
as we, okay, all right.
No, it's just, there's an amount up to which we can borrow for this purpose.
Okay.
And-
That, to me, makes sense, and that way you do it once.
Yeah.
You're not coming back every year.
So I've got a follow-up question for Jason, then I think we probably should let advisory ask some questions. Jason, could you just talk a little bit further about on your last slide where you say outcome of March special town meeting impact, path forward on a few items as well as overall debt capacity? So could you just explain that a little bit in a little bit more detail, like?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, I mean, at least as of the last conversation that these joint committees had together, we had a few options on the table, right? Exploring stuff at Trotter, exploring stuff at Finn, and then exploring at the Neary site. If in the exploration of the Neary site included 2 potential paths, right? One of really continuing feasibility around like a full renovation, remodel, whatever you want to call it, of kind of that existing footprint. And the other was, more focused just on fixing the roof in the present and, maybe avoiding, I'll call it some of the other code compliance type items if the dollar amounts allowed for such a path forward. I think if the town indicates a very strong reaction towards one path or another, it then sets forward potentially accelerating construction cost. If the town says, nope, this is what we want to do, go design it and bring us back something for construction. I think if the town shows that, hey, we need more information and maybe a lack of kind of definitive guidance, it pushes some of these items out, which means you start putting Band-Aids and bandages on things that you maybe wouldn't otherwise have to do without decisive action, right? So a Band-Aid or a bandage is roof only with no other items at Finn and no other, at Neary, and no definitive plan to do anything beyond that for 5, 10, 15, whatever the life of whatever we decide to do, versus the town saying, let's go renovate Neary, do it a certain way up to a certain dollar amount. That kind of solves your capital needs for 15, 20-year time frame on most of your elementary schools, absent roofs and HVAC systems.
So the budget, the capital plan in here doesn't include any of that.
Correct.
So if it's, is it fair to say then if the special town meeting approves, let's say, the Neary roof project, that we then need to pull back on the amount of, or we should consider pulling back on the amount of capital that we're appropriating this year?
My personal opinion is, I think you forecast what the cost per household is of each of these items, and you let the taxpayers make their decision. I don't know that you pull back on one thing because you do another thing. I think the town's capital plan has always anticipated a very large capital spend for schools in and around this time period. What that program entails is up to the town to decide, but we are in the window that we've been forecasting since 2020 of where significant capital needs to be spent on our schools. What school, what project, we can have that discussion at a different time, but I just didn't want anyone running with the 2.1 million and assuming that's it. It's 2.1 plus whatever town meeting approves in March if you bring this forward. You may all decide to wait and see what happens in March to ultimately decide what you're going to put on the warrant for April, but I realize timing is important in terms of how you construct some of these things, and you might have different budget options that you work with depending upon the outcomes of that.
All right, so Marguerite, you have a question?
Jason, I had a question for you on slide number 4, which is process.
Mm-hmm.
At the very bottom, consideration should be given to total capital budget versus individual line items. Could you expand on that a little?
Yeah, so if you actually go back, like the slide before that where we show kind of the historical spend, it has long been the view of capital that the town has potentially underfunded capital in total proportion to our operating budget in terms of general fund appropriation over the time that we've been around. You can see it ebbs and flows, and DOR certainly has recommendations of how much capital spend should be of your overall total operating budget, but there were some years where we were very, very low. I think the general sense is we're headed in the right direction, but we don't want to pivot obviously too much and get sort of outside of budgetary guidance. Brian could probably articulate better than I could in terms of what he sees with comparable communities and any discussions he had with DOR when they were doing their review in the last year.
So this is kind of major change in the way the capital budget could be presented? Is that what we're talking? Brian, can you explain it to me?
No.
Marguerite, what we've always done every year, for as long as I can
do by
remember,
line item,
is,
right.
no, we just, when we've got the budget's too big, we started at 13, 12, 11, we cut capital. We've done it every year I can remember. So we end up, that's where it falls. So, whatever the amount is that's requested, it always gets cut way back.
I think I understand a little bit of where you're going, Marguerite, though.
That
I
it would-
think, yeah, like you're saying, like, would we present something to town meeting that just authorizes, let's just use the 1.7.
Yep.
That authorizes 1.7 of capital appropriation as a capital budget. And then we know what made up that, but instead of voting on the individual line items, would we move towards more of a presenting 1.7? I don't think that's what we're proposing. We did talk about that concept last year.
Yep.
I think what we're really saying is we probably should consider some language, though, that gives, whether it be the select board, advisory, or the town administrator or finance director, some authority to potentially move between the appropriations. So for example, if a police cruiser came in $3,000 less, but one of Bill's trucks comes in 3,000 more, that they could easily move that without being quote unquote out of money from a capital budgeting perspective. Because we do see kind of the continued difficulty in terms of ability to forecast these expenses. Like the department heads are doing the best they can to get us estimates, but they're at the mercy of the vendors, tariffs, and other items that are in front of them in terms of supply and demand.
So I guess the feedback I'd heard on this proposal was that individual items would have to be teased out of the upper number for purposes of voting on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think if the select board was in a position from a policy perspective that they were willing to give some latitude to the town administrator or some designee, then I would ask that the town administrator go work with council and see what options we would have before making a formal recommendation.
Okay, thank you.
Can we go back to the Charter roof for a second? Does it have to be on the April 11th warrant to comply with MSBA? Where are we with MSBA as far as the roof goes?
I think we're in the right spot, but I think let's just, I think if it fails, I don't think the end is, I don't think we're done either. I just think there's a process like there was with the NERI, but I think we're at the right spot where they have definitive cost estimates and are ready to move forward.
But has the MSBA officially voted and the clock has started, or is that not true?
It's a different program. It
Okay.
just works very different. We're on a clock, but it's a very different time frame than what we faced with the NERI decision.
And is the desire to get it approved in April, is that what the schools want?
They've put it forward that way, yes.
And if that's the case, are they going to try to do I don't know, how long will this roof take? Are they going to do it over the summer so it's ready in the fall, or is it a longer replacement?
We didn't specifically have that, but I would have to imagine it's not going to be able to be completed just in the summer,
Okay,
even if they started right when school got out.
all right.
Are we ready to hand it over to the advisory committee? Okay, good. You can want to come up there too if you want. If you have chairs, I can't see if there's a chair there or not. Oh, okay,
There it is.
yeah.
So first off, thank you, Capital Planning, for the wonderful work and the numbers in advance. I know it was a lot of work, so thank you. I only had a couple questions that weren't already asked. One is the phone system upgrade. Is that all townhouse?
Yeah,
plus all
landline
town
phones in
offices?
the town buildings, yeah.
Okay. The only other question I had that hasn't been touched on already is the smart water meters. Are those at the resident level, or is that somewhere else in the system?
If Bill's still on, I'll let him answer that question.
Sure thing, thank you. Year one, we're exploring this, okay? The issue is we have an inordinate amount of water that we're not accounting for. A normal community has about 10% of their water that's unaccounted for throughout the year. We're at about 20%, which is astronomical. In spite of us doing our biannual survey in the field to try to find leaks, we still cannot locate a significant area that we have a deficiency. One of the advantages of having smart meters, which would be the meters in every individual customer's house or business, is not only would the resident have access to their home domestic use to find out if they have leaks inside their house, the town would also benefit by having it also monitor the water system network. So that's something, year one, we're going to explore it. That's the $70,000 we put in. If it's viable and makes sense, year two is the big enchilada, is well, when we'll be looking to deploy it.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Bill. I do support the idea of the road maintenance in a large lump sum, so thank you for that, Al.
Sure, I'll go. Jason, you still there?
Yep.
Awesome. Can you give a little more clarity on the school security upgrades? Are they physical? Is it electronic? Is it?
I think it's a combination, but given obviously the nature of it, further details would need to be discussed in an executive session. So what we have asked is that really the school department and the public safety officials be ready to answer specific questions that residents may have that can be answered in public versus not.
Okay.
Capital has taken, I mean, I'll just be very clear, Capital has taken a lot of trust that we hire the right people and have the experts that are going to bring the right system so that we don't have to do a deep dive for obvious reasons.
Okay, my reasoning, my question is twofold. It ties into the technology upgrades for the classrooms as well. One, it's my personal opinion that doesn't belong anywhere on this. That is a school function. The school should be paying that out of the school budget. It certainly shouldn't be under capital. And knowing that that technology expires usually within 5 years, 7 max, to bond it just doesn't make sense to me. We'll be paying for it long after the useful life of the technology. So
We can't bond beyond the useful life, so Brian would have to speak to what he's used for assumptions there.
I'm concerned about bonding it in the general, Frank, and like I said, I'm concerned that especially classroom upgrades, which I'm assuming is projectors, displays, et cetera, is standard maintenance of this, and should be in the school budget. It shouldn't be on top of that to the town. It should be part of the school budget. So, but that's my opinion, so. The rest I need to dig through, and I want to talk, more to police. We'll do that on the Saturdays, et cetera, and dig into the individual items. But that one really struck me as something that just really shouldn't be here, so.
Okay, we'll pass the feedback on.
That's it for me now, thank you.
All right, moving on to members online. Andrew?
Thanks, Marcy. I think for me, this is just for people to understand, this is a very large capital number than we've ever had before, or at least in my recent memory. I think it's about 16, 17 million of bonded capital plus another 1.7 million of capital articles. I think last year we bonded 5 million or so. So it's a big number. I got to work with Brian on what the debt service would be and how long I would agree with that the useful life of this stuff is probably 5 years, right? I think so, bonding it over that versus I think it might be 10 or 15 here, which I think is a little too long. Yeah, I think it's just the debt service is gonna kill us. I mean, we're gonna probably need some debt exemptions for a majority of these to get under the levy capacity hurdle. I just think this is going to be a tough year to really do this much. I still have my concerns about spending that much money on an eerie roof on a building that might not have that useful life. So again, like told the school committee, we need a minimal project as well, and making sure that that's not an option, which I have yet to see, so. But those are more questions for the Saturday one, but, I think right now, just this overall number is, you know, while all the projects are probably valid, and I also would support doing a large road project fiscally with the levy capacity we have. I mean, including this would be like, I estimate between 10, almost 11% year-over-year tax increase just with this, not even doing the big road project. So, we'll have to sharpen our pencils and see where we end up.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. Eric? I think Eric's online. If- Okay.
There we go. Can you hear me, see me?
Yes, we can.
There we go. No, thank you. Appreciate the thoughtful conversation. Any questions I have were answered, so nothing else to add at this point.
All right, thank you, Eric. Barry? Barry's online as well as Larry.
Thank you. And I'm supportive of the larger approval of the amount for the roads. But are we talking about, when we say roads, are we talking roads and sidewalks? Because I know at Capitol, you had some discussions and talked about separating those items. Are we on board with doing both, or is there conversation to be had about separating them?
Select Board is very supportive of the sidewalks, and have been all along, and that is in that $20 million number.
So Kathy, you're basically saying if you went with the 20 million, you would remove the $2+ million placeholders from how we've split it out right now, which was
Yeah.
a separate sidewalk construction project and a separate road maintenance item.
Yeah. So, we authorized with ARPA 4 different designs of roads, right? Richards, Parkerville, Oak, and Oregon, right? Well, whatever. That's at least 3 out of the 4. So, yeah, that part's done, so we would like to see those 4 built, is I think the sentiment of the Select Board. We've got them designed, so.
Yeah, this is, I think the context was, we used some ARPA money to pay for the design, okay? And so if Bill's there, for example, like one of the sidewalk projects, it's in my kind of, close to where I live, but I think it's a very well justified project, is Richards Road and extending the sidewalk on Woodland Road farther up
That's
to Oregon. So this is close, it's connecting the train station, the sidewalks that go from Finn, there's a gap on Richards Road. We've always having spent the money, it was ARPA money, having spent the money to do the engineering for the sidewalks, obviously, would like to complete that. But, I share some of Andrew Pfaff's concerns here about how's this going to impact potential override. I mean, that's the big thing that hangs over this whole discussion here. And I actually, I could use a little bit of a refresher on the whole process of debt exclusion.
Well, you would exclude the debt, so you wouldn't have to override this piece of it, because you would exclude the debt.
So would that need to be passed on a ballot
Yeah,
initiative?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the town would have to vote to exclude the debt, just
Yeah,
like.
so that's an override.
Well, it's a
No.
debt exclusion vote.
Yeah, it's two-thirds of town meeting and a majority at the polls for,
So it'd be 2 separate votes. We still may have to do an override of the budget, and then you do the debt exclusion.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of, and maybe, I don't know, Al, if this is where you were going. Sorry to kind of hijack your discussion here, but of, getting specific about what roads would be improved. I just think it's something where, I think this is something to be relatively popular. of making investments in roads. That's one thing I know in the select board, you always hear people complain about the condition of roads. I think people would be, of the different items you see, this is one that's very, very tangible. It's something that might be something that people support a debt exclusion for.
So I tested this idea on two members of my family, because I only started poking at this recently, and the response was, is it going to be my road? So I do think that, we're going to have to at least have a list of what the road priorities are. We have to be caveated a bit that, this is the current plan, and I think it would behoove us to make sure that that priority list was well distributed so that a broad section of town benefits.
I mean, Bill does have that.
He's got the list,
Yeah,
I'm
the
looking
map
at it.
with the different color codes.
Yeah,
So,
and he did it, though, not necessarily to distribute it equally, but he did it based on roads that he didn't think there was drainage issues, that he'd have to do that piece of it also. He thinks they're ready to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
And then the second and third tranche, year 2 and year 3, he doesn't know. He's got the roads ready for those, but those may take a lot of underground work to see what's going on underneath there. But the first list of roads he thinks are ready to be fixed.
So to that point, I just wanted to ask a clarifying question for Bill. That $15 to $20 million number that we've been just saying a couple times, or 15 to 25, is that including, because I'm a little foggy here, is that including the sidewalks and anything, and culverts and things that would have to go into this, or is that on top of that? So this number is actually cumulatively much larger than that 15 to 25.
Thank you for the question. The town did two separate studies. One was a pavement management study, the other was a sidewalk study. We're talking pavement management. So the pavement management plan that's been laid out by Beta Engineering really only looked at the roadways. It did not look at guardrails. It didn't look at drainage system. It didn't look at sidewalks. So all of those things, those peripheral things, are not in the plan currently as laid out, which is part of the reason I need to take a look at these roads on an annual basis. We need to assess the drainage system to make sure we're not paving a good road over a bad drainage system. That just doesn't make sense. So we need to go incrementally and do a thorough assessment on what needs to get done and then plan for it accordingly. That's the approach I would like to take.
So if this number of this larger project would come forward, 15 to 25 million is not comprehensive enough to cover everything you're mentioning.
Well, it is. We're going to improve our overall townwide score. We may not pave surficially as many roads as we could if we didn't fix those other things. But if we want a road that's built properly for the long term, we need to take this approach, and that's my recommendation.
Okay, but the net of that would be, if we walked into this with, let's just throw a number, 20 roads, the reality could be we might hit 13 and tap on all that money because we have all these other things to do, and that means that's 7 that we thought we were going to get to that we didn't get to.
That's fair
Okay.
to say. We may not get to all of them. I know of other capital plans that have allocated 18, 20 million at the onset that didn't achieve their entire scope because of these unforeseen issues. Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to understand the reality of this. Thanks.
I think Mike Newt wants to say something.
Quick point. So culverts are excluded from that. So like the Northborough Road culvert was on the capital plan initially and has been moved to a future year. So just to clarify that aspect of it.
Okay.
Barry, do you have any more questions before we move on? We're almost finished with advisory, I think.
No, the other questions can wait till the end of the month.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Larry? Any questions for the group?
Yeah, I just had one question, actually. I'm still trying to digest all the numbers. Clearly, there was a lot of work here. Are there any other items in the list here that, the Try-to-Your roof has a reimbursement associated with it, and if we don't do the roof, then that's effectively lost money. Are there any other items on this list that fall into that category where we're effectively losing money if we don't do the project?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with questions? All right, Andrew.
All right, so I think,
Can I answer Howard's question about the school, the
Sure.
technology? So 20 years ago, the school technology was on the town capital plan. Schools wanted it inside. They wanted to control it, so they hired their own technology person. They hired their own facilities person. We used to have one facilities person, so they hired their own technology. So for a long, long time, anything they bought was inside their school budget, right? So it's only recent that we have seen this carve-out back to the town. So it's actually, you've asked a very good question, why is it just not inside the school budget so that, you know, it's part of their overall increase, because it really is schools, right? So it should probably be there. But they got their own technology person. They used to buy it within the school budget. We didn't see it on the capital plan, and so it's being moved back. So it's a good question.
Would it make sense if that was back underneath the purview of Jay from a town perspective for efficiency? While we're having
different.
this?
It's similar with different technology. So there's a lot of, the teachers have an opinion of what they're using to teach, whether it's an interactive display compared to a projector, compared to an iPad, so it really is, it's called classroom technology for a reason. It really has to do with the teaching styles, which is why it's usually under the school budget, and frankly, it's been aligned under that budget, as Kathy, I think, and I agree on. It almost sounds like a double dip, so we should clarify where that's happening and why it's pushing it out. Is my take on it, so.
I mean, I agree with that approach. I'm just wondering about if there's an efficiency gain, if we're missing anything with having this moved after all these years to have more cohesiveness, if there, you know, I'm assuming there's some level of a gap. I don't know what that gap is, if it's big or small, between the departments that the school has and our IT department in the town. Should they be more coalesced?
They could coexist. I will tell you, on the university level, there's entire departments called technologists that work on picking this gear and working with teachers and teaching them how to use it, whatever. It's a whole other rigmarole that's not usually seen in like a townhouse, et cetera.
And that's probably their argument. So we've talked about this in the past when, again, advisory asked the schools to look at putting them back together. We also asked putting the facilities back together. We used to have one facilities person, and that got separated. So that schools had their own, we had our own. So we did mention that. I remember the night we did it, you know, would you take a look at maybe trying to put this back together? Could we save some money? Not much got said after that. So I don't know the answer, Howard. It may be that it's so specialized on the school side, you really need your own person there. I don't know the answer to that.
And that's fine. Like I said, I'm seeing it as a bonding issue to buy gear that I have a different opinion of where that goes, and we should suss that out, especially before we bond it. I don't think it's a good idea to bond that type of equipment. So.
all right. I'm thinking the only other thing that we might be able to accomplish tonight is thinking about, you know, are there any other, does any of these items should be ask another department to come to the Saturday budget session? So I looked, Kathy, about the rec and the facilities items. So the two rec items are, they're under $50,000, and one of them is the Recreation Capital Fund. I think that's just been an annual article, right? So that's not worth talking about. And the two facilities items, so one is the Capital Maintenance Fund of 125. That's another capital. There, it's increased, right? But that's another annual article. The other item is the DPW Garage 287, which is actually, maybe Bill could, I don't know, Bill could speak to that as well. So
You could.
I think based on that, I think probably don't need to have John Parent come, but what are people's thoughts?
I agree.
I agree.
All right.
Yeah, I'm here. I don't know why my video's not working. Oh, there we go. My understanding is that there's an inefficiency with some of our garage doors, bay doors, that are overdue for replacement and have been on John Parent's list for quite a while. And this is basically what that project is about. So this will weather tight the garage area much better for the workers.
Okay, good. All right. Anyone else have any comments? Tim?
Tim Woodland Road. I thought I'd add a little bit of color to the school technology question, since I was involved in putting the MTC together and had long discussions with both the schools and the town. There is an opportunity, and in fact, the MTC is structured this way. If you think about the schools, there are really two areas where technology shows up. One is in their administrative systems, and there I think there is an opportunity for cooperation and consolidation, whatever. The other is the educational side, and that's tightly integrated. The decisions there are tightly integrated with teaching, curriculum, and all that. And as Howard says, the technology is different, and the way that you select it is different. I think it would just be a burden to try and squeeze those two different things together. As far as where the capital goes in the budget and stuff, that's a sort of different question.
Yeah.
But just from the point of view of to Tim's question, is there an opportunity to somehow make things more efficient by squishing them together? Admin, kind of yes. Educational, definitely no. And the school superintendent and committee are very possessive about the educational side. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, that's useful. My initial thought was like we have a director of all IT, and then we'd have maybe a technologist local to the schools if we would ever think about it. And then that way, at least if there's an efficiency of using a system we already have in place, we would know it from a higher level. We could maybe get more licenses or whatnot. There was an example told to me recently about that licensing idea, but that was just the idea that I had loosely while we're talking about this, not really implementable at the moment.
It doesn't work, and I have worked in the educational universe back in the dark ages too.
All right.
Good idea, but it doesn't work.
Anything else to discuss? All right, so I move that we adjourn.
Well, hold on a second. Let's thank our capital committee for doing all this good work.
Sorry, I'm so eager to.
Mike, it's nice to see you in person, and it sounds like you guys have.
Some minutes. We have some
Yeah,
other
we do.
business.
So this is your usual stellar work, so this is so helpful to help us go from here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can we formally adjourn?
We're trying to thank you, Jason.
Well, actually, Jason, I was just reminded we actually have. You want to just approve our minutes
Jason
now?
wants to adjourn. He just wants to adjourn.
Yeah, you can adjourn. We have one other item. So if you want to adjourn, go ahead.
All right, then I'll adjourn the capital planning committee meeting. Is there a second? I'll second it. Roll call vote, Mike N.
Aye.
Mike S.
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
And I am I as well. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Motion to adjourn the advisory committee meeting as well.
Second?
Roll call vote, Howard,
Aye?
Andrew,
Aye.
Eric,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
and Marcy's aye. Thank you, guys.
All right, if you want, you can stick around for our approval of our minutes. Does anyone have any edits to the minutes from January 6th, which was a super short meeting?
No.
I move that we approve the open session meeting minutes from January 6th.
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay.